as a sign of just how much the media dislike Donald Trump. And they claim he doesn't tell the truth, and he calls them fake news. Get this one. Yesterday, the White House released what I would call a preliminary, and it's some of the remarks the president is going to deliver tonight to the nation and to the Senate and the House in Washington. Well, over at this is the website Infowars, which is run by Alex Jones. They posted it, the release, and said it was an exclusive at Infowars. Well, in the internet age, you're trying to get people's eyes on your page, and so you make a claim like that, and media went, ballistic. Media was apoplectic, screaming that Donald Trump was once again giving all these details to a right wing website, what they call the alt right, and therefore leaving them out. And it just showed you what a scoundrel Donald Trump was. Well, as it turns out, it's what he released to everybody. And then when some other conservatives started saying, folks, you over at the Washington Post and New York Times better chill out because I got it too and you've got it. Several of them refused immediately to believe that they had the same thing that InfoWars had, but they did. It just shows you the level of bile they have when it comes to dealing with the president. Folks, I hope today is the last really cold day. We're looking at some really nice weather, maybe 50 degrees on Sunday, things starting to turn around as we head into March. But those of you who still have to rely on your furnace, if you're having some issues, I'd like to recommend the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. They'll come out, they'll take a look at your issues, and they'll get the job done, and they'll get it done right, and they'll get it done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can call them at 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. We're going to be talking about air conditioning sometime soon. I know that seems to be a bit of a surprise, but what will happen is we'll just suddenly go, it'll be 50 degrees one day, and then all of a sudden we'll get a half a week where it's 75 or 80, and people will be firing up their AC. We've got a caller quickly joining us. It's 24 right now. Caller, you're up next. You're on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yes, I couldn't agree more that the leftists are trying to do everything they can to deceive the public and make them think that Trump is a bad person. And I think these attacks on the Jewish cemeteries and the Jews in general, I think is probably a plan by the left.
Well, and thank you for the call. I was posting something on my Facebook page this morning. The latest attack on a Jewish cemetery was in Philadelphia. It was St. Louis a couple of weeks ago. And now they're saying, well, Mr. Trump needs to come out and do a nationwide primetime speech and denounce racism. Well, he's already denounced racism. Number two, media has not asked the one question. Maybe it's the people who hate Jews the most in this world who are behind it. And that would be, well, perhaps people who come here from the Middle East or those parts of the world where they're already trying to destroy the Jewish nation. But media won't ask that question because it's politically incorrect. Well, on the politically correct side, Steve Millington joins us in studio. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Good morning.
Good morning. When you said the politically correct, I think that I'm most often painted with the politically incorrect brush.
I could say I could see that.
So, man.
I got to attend your big politically incorrect gathering Saturday.
Yes, thank you very much. We had a wonderful time. The crowd was bigger than a year ago. Even though last year, you see, we were right in the throes of the big political races. The presidential campaign was in really hot mode, and this year was just kind of a, let's stop for a minute and take our breath. We had a great crowd. Great speech from State Chairman Steve Yates. Man, he does it's easy to see why that he would have spent a lot of time in the situation rooms at the White House advising Vice President Cheney. Very, very thorough, very articulate. He impresses me a lot.
He wore his red Make America Great jacket and mentioned he got that during the inauguration. And the next day he was on the train in Washington when they had the big Women's March. And he said they were all dressed as private parts, and he was wearing the red jacket. And he said he was not very popular on the train.
He did mention that a lot of people really didn't care much for him. Too bad. All
I
right.
think he could take care of himself,
Yeah,
though.
I think he can. And the reason that he was on the train, by the way, is that his family is from Maryland, I think.
Right,
If I
that Baltimore, Washington
Yes,
area.
and so while he was there attending the inauguration, he just decided he'd go back home and visit with family members for a day or two. And so the easiest way to get there is jump on the train and zing over there. And he said it was an interesting ride.
Now, you got to talk. I talked to the state controller at the table I was at, and I got to talk to Clark Kaufman and just a brief hello to Lance Clough. But you got to spend a lot more time with Republicans just in general from around the state. Any good gossip?
Um, a couple of items of good gossip. Um, you know, the uh, the House of Representatives passed a bill early on in this legislative session that would implement some tax cuts on income, on personal income. And when you shuck it right down to the bottom, for the average guy, you and I on the street and everybody else listening to us this morning, if we're real lucky, we might see 40, $50 a year in tax reductions. And so the question that I asked, and I brought it up to all three of our state senators who were present, um, why do we want to do this tax cut thing? Why don't we take that money and put it back into the transportation department and fix these roads? We have had a horrible, horrible winter season, and it's not over yet. Yes, we have seen some thawing, and if you look in some of the fields, you can see where the moisture is now starting to sink down into the topsoil, and that's where we really want the moisture to be, is sink down in there and percolate down into our subsoil aquifer, if you will. And we're seeing, but for the most part, and primarily in roadways, that frost has not expelled itself yet. So and give it another week or two, a couple of 50-degree temperature days, and all of a sudden we're going to see the signs coming up saying, slow down, frost heaves. That's when we're going to see the real damage to our infrastructure, our roads. So I asked him, I said, why don't we take that money and give it to the transportation department? Selfish me, okay, I'm selfish. I don't want any of it to go to the state department, highway department. I want all of that money to come back to the local highway departments, the Buell Highway District and Filer and Twin Falls City and the Twin Falls Highway District and the Kimberly Highway District and the Jerome Highway District, because I drive mostly on local roads.
Right.
And they all said to me, Steve, you need to get out and drive the freeway. They're having problems too. And I said, okay, maybe you're right, but I want the money at the local level. They all three agreed that's probably a good idea. And I can hear the music, so when we come back, I will tell you a couple of ideas that both of the or three of them suggested to me about that one issue.
We've got more coming up with Steve Millington, chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's 8:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Our studio guest, Steve Millington, is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. We're at 25. Hey, just a quick note. Tomorrow morning, a couple of guests. We'll have one of the medical pros from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls, located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office on the north side. We'll be talking medical issues. And a reminder, Dr. Tripp's office is still looking for new patients. And often they can see you, often doesn't mean always, but often see you on the very same day if you call up with a medical issue. The more serious it is, the better your chances of getting in, but the more serious it is, it's not really better, is it? But we'll leave it at that. And want to point out, too, as well, they have a great motto, life's too short not to feel good. Also, just after 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I've been telling you a lot about Western Visions. And we have a couple of guests who will be joining us in studio talking about high-end renovations tomorrow morning. That's on the way. So Steve Millington was having a conversation about road repairs
Right.
with some of our state legislators over the weekend.
And the question I asked, I put it this way to them: why would you initiate a tax cut when we are desperately in need of money for highway maintenance and repair, especially after this winter? And actually, it's more complex than just that, because we have been shortchanging infrastructure repair, roads and bridges and so forth, forever. You talk to the state DOT and crud, we could use $3 or $4 billion to get up to snuff around here. Uh, so I said, why would we have a tax cut when we do so desperately need that money in highway maintenance and repairs? And one in particular said, I'm running a totally informal, unscientific poll. Which would you rather have? And I said, fix the roads. And he said, you are in a huge majority. Nearly everybody that I am talking to is telling me, fix the roads, never mind the tax cut. Fix the roads. And I talked to the other two senators, and they both said, yeah, that's going to be a critical point.
And you think about
we've got to fix them.
It's not just here. I mean, in Minidoka County,
they're devastated.
Right.
It's going to be huge. And according to news reports coming out last night and this morning, they are scrambling over there to get ahead of the next thaw. And if we start seeing some 50-degree temperatures this weekend again, here it comes.
Yeah.
Here it comes.
And then all you take is a couple of cool days afterwards, and it flips it all around again, and it's...
And you know, we get to the nice warm days, and I like sunshine. Oh, man, I like sunshine. It does wonders to my terrible attitude. But, you know, we get that thaw, get that back up to 45, 50 degrees for 2 or 3 days. We're going to start to pull the frost levels out from underneath these roads, and then we'll really see some breakup on these roads. We need the money to fix the roads. Forget the tax cut.
We have a caller with us. And caller, you're up next, and you're on KLIX with Steve Millington this morning. It's 8:37. Go ahead.
Steve, I totally agree with you. We need the roads fixed. And it bothers me to no end every time I see these road guys dumping that very expensive cold mix into a hole full of water, which just gets pounded out in 5 minutes, when they could put a slurry mix in there of sand and gravel, and it'd probably hold better. But I want to know, where is the money going that I have increased in my fees for the cars I own and the gas I buy? And now they're talking about putting more gas tax on us. Let's see some results before they start gouging our eyes some more.
And that's an outstanding comment. One of the things that always bothers me is you go down the road and you see the highway department guys, and there's 4 trucks, 6 guys, and 1 guy working.
I had a friend, John DeFrancisco, and he was a longtime state senator from upstate New York. And when I worked up there, he had an idea. When gasoline was really expensive about 10, 12 years ago, he said that their gas tax, when they reached $3 a gallon, they put a rider into the law that the gas tax, they wouldn't collect any more after $3 a gallon, because it was a percentage. And so at $3 a gallon, that's where it stopped. And
that's right.
That was a benefit. Now, if gasoline drops to $1.50, which could happen soon because we've got a glut of oil that you wouldn't believe in this country, but if it drops, I don't know that a gas tax is a bad thing. But if we had an insurance policy where if it jumped and spiked again, the gas tax would come to us.
Had a ceiling on it.
Right. That might work.
Now, so our viewers our listeners understand. Heaven forbid. It's a good thing we are not being viewed. You would be horrified. But our listeners in New York, their gas tax collection is different from Idaho. Ours is a fixed rate. We have so many cents per gallon of state tax collected on every gallon of fuel that's sold. And if I am running on the right track this morning, I think that's like 29 cents a gallon. So it's fixed regardless what the rate is. In New York, it is a sliding scale, and it's a percent of the total purchase price of the gasoline. And so if it's 10% and gas is $3, then it's a huge number for gas taxes. If gasoline's only $1.50, not quite so much. So there's 2 different approaches to how we collect the revenue from the sale of motor vehicles.
We've got more coming up with Steve Millington from the Twin Falls County Republican Party in just a couple of minutes. It's 26. You're listening to KLIX at 840. Joining us in studio, Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. We're at 843. Call it 25. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You know, my diet, just quickly, quick note, my diet gets a little easier over the next 40 days because of the Lenten period. I have to sacrifice a lot of things. Every year I basically swear off pizza because you're supposed to give up something that you like. And I can still eat pizza. I can't eat a whole pizza like I used to, but I just wanted to mention the total body transformation system, which I have been involved with for the last few months. And it is a scientifically proven, it's not some fad diet, scientifically proven and successful, healthy way to lose weight, developed by a company that's been in business with an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau for over 20 years, supported by scientists at some of the biggest research universities in the country. You recognize the names: Columbia, Cornell, Tufts. Not that they have very good football teams. Some of them do, but they have good research units. And it is scientifically proven to burn 6 times more fat, and you'll lose 8 times more weight. The normal results from diet and exercise alone. And the meal replacement plan, often healthier than the meals you're replacing. And in fact, the cost is about the same as the meals you're replacing. So there's no extra money out of your pocket. You can still have a healthy amount of calories. And the average participant will lose 22 pounds and 4 inches off his or her waist in just 60 days. And I do want to mention an unconditional full money back guarantee. If you'd like to know more, contact Marketing Executive Don Chandler. He's at 208-731-3560. He's right here in Twin Falls. Again, that telephone number is 731-3560. Don, though, is also willing to travel. I wanted to pass that along, too. It's 845, and before we get back to the telephones, this name has been coming up a lot in the last few days. Tommy Alquist, doctor and businessman, developer from Boise. And today I believe he's formally announcing he's a candidate for the Republican nomination for governor in Idaho. But, you know, apparently people are upset. Look, I showed up at your event the other night. I'm not running for anything. And I got a chance to meet with him and talk to him for about 5 or 10 minutes. And people are complaining that he's going to Republican events, but he's not an announced candidate. Well, neither am I. Nobody's filed a complaint about me, but Mr. Denny at the State Department had to issue a note about it the other day in response to the complaint.
Well, evidently, the difference between you going to our Lincoln Day is you reside in Twin Falls County. And so that's not quite the same as having somebody from outside the Twin Falls. Now, we had lots of guests and visitors who do not live in Twin Falls County. The difference is with Tommy Alquist is that he's been making the circuit, so to speak, all of the Lincoln Day banquets that he can possibly arrange to get to, and just shake hands and introduce himself and get his name out in front of people. So somebody lodged a complaint with the Secretary of State's office, and they said, hey, wait a minute, this guy is, quote, campaigning, unquote, but he's not an official filed candidate, and you can't do that. And the Secretary of State said, wait a minute, here's the rules. You can talk all you want. You cannot do any fundraising. The day that you collect your first $10 bill for a campaign that you have not officially announced and filed paperwork for, you're in violation.
That becomes academic today because he's doing it this morning.
However, if you're just going around the state talking to everybody, that's not a problem.
A listening tour.
And a listening tour. So Tommy Alquist's people got together and they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. This was on Friday of last week. They talked with the Secretary of State, and they said, okay, here's what we want to do. We will officially file campaign documents with the Secretary of State's office today, and indicating that we are a candidate for governor in the state of Idaho on the Republican ticket. And simultaneous with that, they are doing a campaign tour around the state, hitting Boise and Idaho Falls, Pocatello, Twin Falls, and Coeur d'Alene. That's
a lot of traveling.
It is. They do have an airplane, and so they just kind of buzz around. So his campaign will be in Twin Falls Wednesday afternoon at 4 p.m. at the Lane Pump facility out on Kimberly Road. Some of his campaign organizers are familiar with the management there at Lane Pump, and they agreed to just open the place up and say, "Come on in. We have a big shop. We can have anybody and everybody show up and ask a few questions." So Tommy Alquist, Twin Falls, Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock at the Lane Pump facility out on Kimberly Road. Now, it's interesting that there was a certain Democrat, and I can't remember now the name.
Yeah, she serves in the state Senate, I
Yeah,
believe, and hinted or tried to drop a hint that he might actually be
a Democrat. However, one of the state leaders in the Democrat Party issued a rebuttal and said, "No, that's not. We are not trying to encourage people to run as Democrats, who in fact are Republicans. We want Democrats running as Democrats. He's a Republican. Let him go over on the Republican side of the table, and we're not interested."
I was impressed by him physically because he's tall. He's a big fellow.
Yeah, he's large.
But also, if you look at the Boise skyline, a lot of those new tall buildings, he put those up.
Yep.
We have a caller with us.
Okay.
And,
good morning.
I want to point out 7360300, the number, and you're on the air.
Hi there.
Good morning, Bill and Steve. There's a hot topic that's under the radar, basically, at least as far as news coverage, is that our state legislature, there's a bill 108 in the Senate, which would call for Idaho call for a constitutional convention, and there's another bill in the House that's still in the House State Affairs Committee, 018. Those two bills should be vigorously opposed. The Senate will be voting on the total bill because it made it out of committee. But there's a real fallacy in this. The Constitution's not deficient. It's the people that we've elected that go back there and violate their oaths of office, particularly Article 1, Section 8, where it limits where the spending should be. And we could balance the budget very easily if we did that. But the idea of getting an amendment or throwing the process open just leaves it to all kinds of skullduggery that we might lose the present Constitution, like they did when they, revised the Articles of Confederation, threw the whole thing in the garbage can and started over. Fortunately, we had some wise people like Washington and Franklin Madison to bring us what we have today, but I don't think we have those kind of wise people anymore.
Well, I'm going to add to that, too, and thank you for the call. Under the radar, I think we've mentioned it 3 times a week over the last couple of months on this program, and every time I pick up a newspaper, I see them online, there's a guest commentary in the op-ed pages about it, and I get daily email updates and 2 or 3 of my email accounts about it. I don't know that in a 77-minute radio show, I don't know that I want to make it repeat it day after day after day, but I understand the concern, but we still need 34 states, and I don't know that it's ever going to happen.
Well, there's 2 or 3 things. We got to have 2/3 of the states, 34 of them, must petition for a constitutional convention. We are not at that level yet, but we're getting close. Last I heard, we were at the 31 or 32 threshold, so we still need.
But it could be years before we actually get those others.
Now, remember that even if they do that, then once this constitutional convention gets done, they have to have 3/4.
38. Yeah.
Right. 38 states must approve the actions of that constitutional convention. And that's going to be a huge step.
I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime.
I don't either, frankly. Now, for those of you who may be interested in the House of Representatives, the bill that our caller referenced comes out of the State Affairs Committee.
Right.
And if I remember right, that is a Representative Lord Chester is the chairman of that committee.
Right.
And you can go to idaho.gov and click on legislature and click on committees.
He's been criticized. I think people said, well, he approves of this, but I think what he's doing is saying, look, I'll just let everybody on the floor take a look at it.
That's right. Part of his job is give it a fair hearing. He personally may be not in favor of it, but as committee chairman, he has to kind of give it a hearing, and when it gets down to the vote, he probably vote no.
And they've allowed people, Tom Coburn and some others, national figures, to come in here and talk about it.
That's
but
right.
That's because I think they want the legislators to get every opinion on this because it is a big issue.
Become better informed on it.
Right.
So if you go to Idaho Gov and the legislature and committees, state affairs, I think his first name's Tom.
Yeah.
Lorchester, and from over in Iona, eastern Idaho. He's got an email right there. And when you click on state affairs, all the other members of state affairs committee is going to show up. And I threw my list away of who was on the various committees. I think there's a couple of members of that state affairs committee from our Magic Valley area. And I would like to say a name, but if I did, I'd be wrong. So I won't. But go there and take a look. Send them an email and say, don't do this. This is not a good thing. So, yeah, that's going to be a bit of a problem.
We have another caller, I believe, looking to join us. Caller, are you still there? You're on the air. No, we're going to try the next line then. Hi, you're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention a couple things that I learned recently about the possible Article 5 convention, if it's called. One is the ratification process is up for grabs if the convention is called, and nobody really talks about that. That's part of the convention process. The rules are adopted. And the other thing is to consider is it's not all going to be Republicans in a convention. It's
right.
You have a
California.
battle zone.
Yeah.
So anything is vulnerable if you call a convention. So I tend to side on the point is we don't want to go there. Not now, not ever.
And this is
that's a very good point.
And I don't know, is it done by population? Because if California got to choose more delegates?
Nobody can answer that question to my satisfaction. Now, I'm not the most skilled, knowledgeable person there, but so far I've not heard a good, solid answer. She's correct that once the Constitutional Convention is empowered, they can go through their own set of rules for the convention.
Well, the first one was done in secret, behind closed doors.
That's right.
Yeah. Madison said in 1830 in an interview it was the only way they could get anything done without the public looking over their shoulders.
And getting so much input that it stalled the entire process. Now, if we go back to that Constitutional Convention in 1789, I think it was, the representation there was based on a population by state. Virginia had a large population there because they were one of the largest populous states. Rhode Island, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we come up with the Electoral College for electing a president, because the little states said, we want to have a voice. Well, you have a constitutional convention. Is it going to be one member per state, as in, quote, governors, unquote? Or is it going to be two people per state, as in United States senators? Or is it going to be based on the population of the states, like the House of Representatives?
We got about a minute and a half left. Caller, you got to make it quick. Go ahead.
All I wanted to do was say that if you want to get to your opinion across to the governor of Idaho, you call his office 334-2100, 334-2100, and calls directly to the governor's office are very effective. And then also the Department of Transportation local number is 736-3088, 736-3088, and talk to Nathan Jerky. And then, because you're right, these roads are an issue that is on the top of everybody's mind. Thanks.
Hey, you bet. And one of the state senators that I talked to, Senator Burt Brackett, is chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. And he just said, Steve, there's some things we're trying to get done that will probably round up close to $50 million extra dollars to put into the transportation funding, just specifically because we've had such a horrific impact on our highways due to our weather this year. But that we're not there yet. So don't let that one get away from you.
Until the runoff and the avalanches start in the spring.
Yeah, let's stay on them. We got to get that money we do it. I like tax cuts. I hate paying taxes, but I really like to drive on a road where I can drive down the road.
When's the next meeting of the Twin Falls Central
We're going to have a
Committee?
March 8th meeting.
A week from tomorrow.
Yep, week from tomorrow.
At County West.
At County West Planning and Zoning Conference Room, 7 o'clock.
All right. We got to thank Steve Millington for dropping by today. And the steak was great the other night. I've got to point that out. That was very good.
We had I've always said our Lincoln Day banquet is good people, good food, and good times. and this year we did it again.
We've got another hour coming up of Top Story. We're also going to be talking about a big sportsman event. That's coming up at 9:20 this morning. We're at 26 on KLIX.